Good evening. I'd like to call the Village Board meeting for the Village of Cary for Tuesday, September 20th, 2022 to order with roll call, please.
McAlpine?
Here.
Collier?
Here.
Dudek?
Here.
Weinhammer?
Here.
Walrath?
Here.
Thank you. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. We'll now go to the open forum where the public is invited to make an issue-oriented comment on any matter of public concern not otherwise on the agenda. I have a couple of people have signed in. Matt Kunkel.
Hi, I'm just here to introduce myself. I'm Matt Kunkel. I'm running for McHenry County Board here in District 1. The new redistrict, District 1, Cary is part of that. Just a quick introduction. I've been in McHenry for many, many years, small business owner, resident initially in Union, Marengo area, last dozen or so years now here in Barrington Hills, Algonquin. My grown kids are taking over the business. It's given me a little free time, and I'm choosing to use that free time to support my county and hopefully get some help to District 1 and McHenry County in general. I appreciate your time and appreciate you letting me introduce myself. I have a little bit of literature. If it's all right, I'd like to leave it on the back table when I leave. Is that all right?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Alrighty. Is this Mark Polis or? Oh, that's you? Okay. Here for, so, Peter Spizzeri, are you here for a particular item?
Item A.
Okay, I'll call you at that time. The other individuals that signed in, David Hall, Farial Rauman, are you all here for something that's on the agenda? Yes. Okay, I will call you up at that particular time. We'll go ahead and close open forum at 6:03. Now to the mayor's report. A couple things. I have a proclamation for rail safety. Rail Safety Week, September 19th through the 25th, 2022, whereas Illinois 125 crashes occurred at railroad crossings, resulting in 32 personal injuries and 21 fatalities during 2021. And whereas the state of Illinois is a leader in supporting highway, rail, grade crossing, and pedestrian safety programs, and whereas 2022 marks the 5th year of Operation Lifesaver and designated in National Rail Safety Week, which coincides with Rail Safety Week in Illinois, to implement the safety initiative across the country, and whereas the Cary Police Department will be participating in this important safety endeavor. Now, therefore, I, Mark Koenig, Mayor of the Village of Cary, do hereby proclaim September 19th through 25th, 2020 as Rail Safety Week and encourage all residents of the Village of Cary to recognize the importance of rail safety education and obey all rail safety laws, dated this 20th day of September 2022. Thank you. Two other things. One, Trustee McAlpine and I attended the Illinois Municipal League's annual conference. It was quite informative. We were treated to actually kind of like a candidates forum at the beginning of it. We were addressed by both governor candidates and both Secretary of State candidates. It was very informative. The sessions that we attended were quite informative. The ones that we attended, one on retail, that really coincides, and it kind of shows that we are really lining ourselves up for success with what the village is and what people are talking about and where we need to be and the foundations that we have. So thanks to staff and the board for continuously setting us up. So that was really interesting to be a part of that. And on a legislative note, everything that we have been lobbying for, I attended a legislative forum where both sides of the aisle were really kind of going to be working for us for our LGDF home rule, non-home rule community items. So that was really refreshing to hear. it is election season, so, you take everything with a grain of salt, but it was nice to have both sides of the aisle coming together for the greater good of all the municipalities. So it was very well received by us. And also through my hat as second chair of the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, Dave Bennett is retiring, and he is thankfully holding on until we just named his successor, Neil James. He's going to be our new executive director starting October 1st. So we're very excited about him. He comes from a long line of municipal and executive directorships with the COGS, which was very important to us, and most recently with the West Suburban Solid Waste Agency. He's the executive director. So he was very impressive, and I can't wait to work with him. Dave will be missed, but it's nice to turn a new chapter and see things. So that was very exciting for us here. Any trustee reports? Nothing. Now we're going to go to a bid opening for the proposed sale of 441 Main Street, Cary, Illinois, known as our senior center. I have received one sealed bid, which I will open now. We followed the process that the state statute mandates that we comply with for the sale of public property. So I'm going to open this now. It has not been opened yet. It's like Christmas. Oh, really? The one bid that we have on behalf of True North Properties and its designees, I hereby propose to purchase property owned by the Village of Cary located at 441 West Main as described for the total price of $100,000, paid immediately, funds pursuant to the redevelopment agreement and purchase of sale agreement to be written, reviewed, and signed by the developer and Village of Cary and their legal representation. Title delivered to True North Properties or its designee shall be commercially acceptable, title-free, and clear of all liens, reservations, acceptance, and encumbrances except for otherwise agreed upon purchase and sale agreement. So with that, I move that the board accept a bid received from True North Properties in the amount of $100,000, subject to negotiation and completion of the final development, purchase, and sale agreement by the village and purchaser.
Second.
Courtney, roll call, please.
Collier,
Yes.
Weinhammer,
Yes.
Walrath,
Yes.
McAlpine,
Yes.
Dudek,
Yes.
Okay. Moving forward, I will entertain a motion to approve consent agenda items A through H as designated on the monitor here and on our village website.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Weinhammer,
Yes.
McAlpine,
Yes.
Walrath,
Yes.
Collier,
Yes.
Dudek,
Yes.
Thank you. Now moving, consider an ordinance for items for separate action. Consider an approval and ordinance granting conditional use for an indoor gun range for the McHenry County Joint Firing Range located at 460 Carywood Circle, Cary, Illinois.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Who's going to take this?
I can-
Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor, Village Board. The request this evening is to review a proposal for a conditional use for the proposed gun range for the McHenry County Joint Firing Range. Little summary of the property. The subject property is zoned M Limited Manufacturing. The property was annexed into the Village of Cary back in 1973 as part of the Cary Park Point Industrial Park. It has been utilized as a Cary Public Works operations facility since that time period. As mentioned, the petitioner is seeking approval of conditional use this evening for an indoor gun range to be constructed on a portion of that property. As proposed, the new indoor gun range will be about 11,700 square feet in total size. Will be set back from Carywood Circle on the southeastern portion of the property, over 300 feet from the property line. The required building setback is 30 feet, so it will exceed code by about 270 feet from that property line. The proposed facility would be utilized for police training purposes only, would not be open to or for use for the general public. The building would be owned by McHenry County, but would have multiple partnering organizations for the use and operation of that facility, which would include the Village of Cary. There are no other changes that are proposed to the existing public works use of the property, with the exception of adding this new structure to that property. This slide shows the proposed layout of the site plan for the proposed improvements. The building will be constructed at the northeast corner of the existing parking lot for the Public Works Administration building. It will be constructed into an existing hillside in that area, so a portion of the building will be submerged into the ground as you go from the south to the north of the structure. This slide shows the proposed building elevations as far as the design of the structure. It will try to closely match the existing building on the property, which is the Public Works Administration building, from a material standpoint and color scheme. And as you can see in the west elevation drawing, as you go from the right-hand side, that's image from, which is the southern portion of the building, to the left-hand side, towards the north, you can see in the gray area in the image is where the ground elevation is located at. So as you go from south to north, approximately 65 to 75% of the building would be submerged within the ground. This slide shows the proposed elevation or rendering of what the building would look like with primarily brick materials on the south and west side of the building, and then more standing seam metal to match the existing public works facility. During the public hearing before the ZPA, there was extensive discussion regarding the design of the building and the compliance with the village's noise regulations, which are summarized on the slide. Essentially, there's a section of the code which speaks towards performance standards for uses within the manufacturing district that requires a maximum decibel level for any use or operation within that district that should be recorded at the property line. The proposed facility will be required to adhere to this requirement as it was excuse me, adjacent to a single-family attached subdivision directly to the south across Carywood Circle and the Carywood subdivision. That property is adjacent to the site is zoned R3, so under the village's requirements, the building would be required to maintain a maximum 50 decibel level at the property line for the proposed use. Through the discussion at the zoning board hearing, the petitioner did provide testimony as far as how the building is designed to accommodate that standard and will meet that standard. After construction, if it's determined that it does not comply with that standard, there will be ways to retrofit it further to further reduce any noise that is emanating from the facility. The petitioner is here this evening as well, can provide additional information regarding that if there are additional questions from the village board regarding the design of the structure. As with any conditional use that is requested within the village, there are various standards that are identified within the Unified Development Ordinance that need to be met for the consideration of the use, which are summarized on the slide. In general, the proposed use would not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, or general welfare. The use will not substantially diminish or impair values of property within the immediate vicinity. Use will not contribute to an overburdening of municipal services and is consistent with the village's comprehensive plan. Based on the evidence and testimony that was provided during the zoning board public hearing on September 8th, the ZPA during that meeting determined that the various conditional use standards have been met and recommended approval of a motion by a vote of 6 to 1 to approve a conditional use for an indoor gun range for the McHenry County Joint Firing Range to be located at the subject property per the conditions that are listed in your staff report. As mentioned, the petitioner is also here, can provide some additional testimony or response to any questions that the board may have, but staff is here as well to answer any questions you may have. And one other thing, just to note, within your on the dais this evening, there was a petition that the village did receive this week from several residents in the neighboring subdivision that were signed as far as additional concerns that they had that was received after the zoning board hearing on September 8th.
We have several people that have signed in to address the village board regarding this. Why don't we start out with Peter Spizzirri?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Peter Spizzirri, 308 Sterling Circle here in Cary. Thank you for letting me speak this evening. I'm very much in favor of this range. I'm very pleased that Cary is a leader in McHenry County for this very necessary facility for police training. The worst problem we have with the way our society has had events occur is an active failure to train. So this concept of responsibility equaling citizenship and how do we get things done and protect children, for example, in schools or with a Highland Park event, proving that anything can happen at any time. This kind of facility, especially in the southeast corner of our county, accessible to all sorts of police departments and different areas. For example, Dave Dorn, Barrington's police chief, or Steve Stevens, the former Cary chief who's in Buffalo Grove, could in the future perhaps bring his officers in. This is a joint effort, which pleases me as well. Having additional police on Cary streets coming and going is not a bad thing. Having them know our neighborhoods and our streets is a positive thing if, God forbid, we ever needed them. The other part of that, too, is police departments are familiar with an area. You cannot downplay that sense of training again, just the simple familiarity. Our police department trains its officers to know the streets before they're allowed to drive, because we have all sorts of interesting little nooks and crannies in this thing called a river. And so that kind of training, that awareness of training, just stays absolutely critical to me, as the worst problem, again, is an active failure to train. Situational awareness in training is key. Understanding necessary force by experience cannot be replaced. That this facility is basically buried for the range, giving extra safety to anybody around it, as well as maybe some soundproofing. Also has a major classroom, and that classroom up front where officers can train is absolutely critical. I've gone through the Cary Citizens Police Academy. One of my worst experiences was approaching a car at night in the dark that had tinted windows. Training is so critical. The officers have a right, no matter what, to go home to their families after, and it's our duty to give them the training and the means to do their jobs properly and to do it safely and to keep our community safe. The other plus part of this is that, police, again, for local businesses, police officers eat. They will be at our restaurants. They will add to the revenue stream of the town in their own way. And the complexity of modern policing is not going to get any easier. So again, I hope you approve this. I'm very pleased that Cary's in a position of leadership for this, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. David Hall.
I'm David Hall, 2105 Hillside Drive in Cary. Kind of doing bullet points here. I don't have an entire thought process written out here, but this thing's going to be running 24/7, 365. And if we put that photograph up there that shows the overview, you're literally putting this in people's front yards. This isn't not in my backyard, because it will be in my backyard, because I live right past those townhomes. You go down one more street, that's my subdivision right off the bottom of that map right there. So I think you're taking a huge gamble with people's lives, with their homes, with the value of their homes. You're interfering with their ability to have a reasonable life of peace and quiet. That's why we live down there. This area is topographically a natural amphitheater. The sound carries down by the river. This is right by Cary Country Club. And on top of everything else, if you went to the west on that photograph, all of your constituents are up on High Street, and that sound is going to come right out of that ceiling. If you've ever been on Target, you can stand in the parking lot, you can stand on the entrance streets, you can stand by the woods to the north, and you can hear the reports coming out of that building. There has not been any consideration made to the fact that these homes are in such a close proximity with the traffic coming through there. This is a residential area. Don't be fooled by this misnomer of that's an industrial park. It might be an industrial park, but it's fronted by houses, and there's houses to the west and houses to the south. Not only the people that work in those businesses having to hear these reports. So are you going to guarantee us that not one report shall be heard from the property line? No, you're saying it's going to be heard, and oh well, too bad for you guys. And quite literally, I think the police should be ashamed, because they came to that site and they turned around and went, oh, look at those townhomes. Well, who cares about those people? They live by the poop plant. That was thrown out at the zoning meeting. Oh, it's by the poop plant. We're looking for areas that aren't so desirable, where, you know, those people live, apparently, because they don't seem to care about us. You know, they knew they would be, I'm sorry, apologize. Not one word about this was raised during the recent sheriff's election, which is kind of surprising, such a big, whether legacy or political passion product. I don't know what this is doing here. This never should have been rendered. This never should have been located in the city of Cary. You guys know that this area is quiet, and we moved there because of that. And there's plenty of places like out west on 31. There's industrial parks all over. I could go through all the towns. There's Lakeview, there's Foxmore, there's Lakemore, Crystal Lake, Wonder Lake, Lake in the Hills, Algonquin. There's municipal buildings in areas. You know what? I got an idea. Let's fill in that retention pond and build it right here by your building with those people's houses right there. What would happen? They'd be up in arms. They'd go crazy. But down here by the townhouses, we don't care about them. We'll let it slide. You know, it makes me feel terrible that I'm actually going to be complaining to the people who are supposed to enforce peace and quiet, who are generating the noise. Who's going to listen to my complaint? Well, they're the ones making the noise, so why should they ever listen, and why would anybody care about what we think? 365 days a year, 24/7. Whenever they want to turn it on, they turn it on. Cars coming and going, reports coming out. You know, this was called a product, their product. Well, this is our neighborhood, and I don't care about your product. Your product should be somewhere else where if you can't guarantee not one sound is going to come out of that building that people have to listen to at 3 in the morning, can you imagine? Rapid fire succession of gunshots going off. Pop, 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 pop. Hours and hours of this train, 10 lanes, 40 guys, endless use. We were told that this was going to be used for police training. There's already rumors on the street. You know, maybe the public can slide in there and borrow it for a little bit. Yeah, that wouldn't be a too bad idea. And the fact that this isn't going to be held to some kind of ordinance where it can only operate during normal business hours, 7 to 5, 8 to 5, that'd be great. And there's also the possibility that they could be using like a laser type target training where they don't need to use live rounds and do training along those lines. I could probably go on for another 45 minutes about what I have as far as thoughts go. Extremely disappointed that the city of Cary would even consider putting something like this, which generates noise, and the output of this particular product is noise pollution. Guarantee there's not a sound? Not a sound ever? Great, bring it on in. But I don't hear anything now, and I don't want to hear anything in the future. And on top of everything else, I want to remind everyone, love the police, need the police, want the police, and just move it to some other location, not in my backyard. Thank you.
Ferial Rahman? I'm going to ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes since we have multiple people, okay?
Certainly. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ferial Rahman, and I live by the poop place. In fact, my building in that picture, if you see it, you can see it's the building closest to the Poop Place, which is really our public works and how it should be referred to as. I wholeheartedly support all the points that Mr. Hull just made, because those were the same points that we are concerned about, and we circulated a petition covering those points. One of the points that we, whoa, sorry, one of the points that we did make, I really don't need this. I've got a very
You
caring.
do, because we record this, so that
Oh,
picks you
I
up.
see.
Thank
Okay.
you.
I have a very caring voice.
We can
I
hear
can
it.
project it across a football field without even straining.
fine.
Anyway, here's the thing. The entrance to this proposed firing range is, I believe, going to be at Cary Woods Circle. If you look at the map or the photograph, you can see that it's right where Cary Woods Circle bends, or literally, well, circles. And that's the entry point for the new proposed firing range. Why not the Spring Street access? Because Cary Woods Circle is used by the residences of Cary Woods, and it's pretty tight there as it is. So now if we have additional traffic for it, we are going to have a really serious bottleneck. So one of the things that we have petitioned for is that instead of using Cary Woods Circle as the entry point, that Spring Street entry, because there is one, should be used for doing it as an entry to relieve the industrial area. Now, a lot of emphasis has been given about how this is an industrial zone or an industrial area and so on. Well, Cary Woods got developed in 2002 and 2003, and they were able to develop Cary Woods as a residential area because they got the permission, zoning permission, from the village, naturally. So now suddenly the residences are not even being considered as part and parcel of the surrounding community. The only mention is made to the industrial area and, of course, the public works itself. So that is also of concern. It makes us who live in Cary Woods, there's 144 homes that are being completely ignored. Nobody has asked us what we think about this. Nobody has taken it into consideration. And if I've exceeded my 3 minutes, I apologize. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Koenig.
Let's see. I can't read your writing. At 467 Cary Woods. Is that Lindsay?
Thank you so much. I just wanted to state what they,
Could you state your name and address, please?
Lindsay Sawicki, 467 Cary Woods Circle. I just would like to reiterate what everybody else has reiterated. I know that it's been seen as a manufacturing in an undesirable location, but you have to realize this is our home. This is, where we have our families and our friends come and visit. I just would like you to keep that in mind when you're making your decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Paul?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Paul Powers. I live at 404 Cary Woods Drive. We moved to Cary. Fariel and I did 2002. I grew up in Evanston, Illinois, and I've really enjoyed my time in the village of Cary. I think the village does a fantastic job in snow removal, municipal work, fire. We've had the fire department come by, help us with our smoke alarms one night, the police also. The whole village, I think everything is right about the village. I've enjoyed living here 20 years. I'm a municipal worker in Winnetka, Illinois, so I understand change is inevitable in municipalities, and I understand the need for a training facility for the McHenry County Task Force, and I just think that if the hours were limited to a daytime training facility, it would benefit a lot of the people that are worried about the noise at night. So I appreciate your time, and thank you very much. Thanks to the Village of Cary.
Thank you. Is there anybody else here that would like to address the village board regarding this item on the agenda? We have a couple representatives of the project. If you'd like to, you're from FGM. If you would like to speak to the sound issues within the facility, please come up to.
Members of the board, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. We are very much aware of the sound issues, citing it at the last meeting, the concerns. I'd like to talk about the wall construction and how we're mitigating the sound in the range. The project is going to be constructed with a 1-foot thick concrete wall around the range, poured in place concrete wall. Oh, I'm sorry. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. It's going to be constructed with a 1-foot thick concrete wall with exterior insulation as well as interior insulation. The interior insulation is a product by a company called Troy Acoustics, which is a leading edge range acoustic manufacturer. So this is not just regular soundproofed insulation from a Home Depot. This is specifically designed to mitigate the sound. Within the structure, we're going to have sound baffles covered in the insulation as well. On top of that, we are going to have underside of full acoustical absorbing spray insulation on the roof. On top of that, we're having additional insulation that will all help to mitigate the sound. In doing that, we are burying the portion of the range 3/4 into a hillside, so it's going to be below ground. The exterior, could you go to the plan for me, Brian, if you wouldn't mind? If I can draw your attention to the floor plan, there's an exterior equipment where our exterior units are. That's that little appendage to the side. We are wrapping that in acoustical paneling as well and building that out of concrete. All of the mechanical units will be on sound isolators, vibration isolators, to address all of the acoustical concerns. So as we increase the mass of the wall, the airspace, that's going to increase the amount that the sound is absorbed. Any reverberation noise inside the range is going to be handled by a rubber bullet trap. As the projectile leaves the weapon, it's going to be shot into a rubber trap. So there's not going to be the bang bang. Okay. The training facility, the classroom, all of the services are being put in the front of the structure to allow the sound. The sound would have to carry through basically the entire building out 300 feet to get to the property line. I said last time, so basically the way sound works, it's in waves and frequencies, okay? And as we saw in the, sound is calculated in ranges. So 50 to 60 decibels, 70 to 80 decibels. That is taking into account people's perception of sound. Your perception of sound would be different than my perception of sound, okay? I can assure you the materials that are being put in this facility have been tested. They're high-end quality materials, and we are taking into account all of the sound concerns with the construction of this facility.
Board have any questions about that?
I do. Has this material been used in any other ranges that
Yes,
have
sir.
been built?
Yes, sir.
What is the decibel level at 300 feet?
So that's going to, again, that's going to vary. I would say most 30 to 40 decibels, which is under the required. I will also, if I may add to your question, commercial ranges do not necessarily use the type of insulation that we are proposing for this facility. This is high-end soundproofing. I have personally used this in retrofitted facilities for law enforcement agencies around the state, okay? In facilities that were built not to be ranges. So I'm basically wood studs, brick wall. We've insulated this and it's been a drastic difference. So starting from scratch and starting at the beginning, designing this with all of these factors in mind, we are quite confident that the sound will not be an issue.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Of course.
With also building it into the ground, where
Yeah,
it's underground,
correct.
will that also help to mitigate the sound?
Yes.
Do you have any comparison that that's been done before, that you know that that's a successful way to mitigate sound?
A lot of
Sorry.
I'm sorry. A lot of firing ranges in the West do that. They build these outdoor ranges in the hillside, but basically, the sound does get absorbed. It goes into the ground. I'm trying to think of a good example. You know, in a house with a basement, you have a TV on, and you're walking on the outside. That sound from that television is going to be absorbed through the concrete into the earth. Sound travels through air. That's why there's no sound in space, right? Now I'm going to space, but that's how sound is carried through air. Underground, it gets absorbed. So it's sound deadening, yes.
I have a question for staff. What equipment are we currently housing and utilizing on a regular basis at the Public Works facility?
Certainly, depending on the part of the facility you're referring to, but over in our wastewater treatment plant, we have equipment that includes blower motors, pumps. We have aeration basins as part of our treatment process that are constantly emitting sound from the bubbles that are being pressed into the system. In the Public Works facility itself, we have a full-service mechanics bay. So at times, depending on the operations and repairs, we're using various power tools and equipment inside that building as well. And then we're also loading.
If we could speak, excuse me, if we could speak directly to the items that are closer to the residents than the proposed building, what is in that area? I believe there's a building closer to the residents, a current building closer to the residents than the proposed building.
So our Public Works facility, our main building is the far south structure on our property that is closest to the existing townhomes. And our mechanics bay and our operations are on the west end of that building, so the southwest corner or west corner.
And forgive me, that may be kind of a dual question for both of you. Standard diesel truck that we operate out of Public Works facilities, those come and go through that location?
Correct.
Okay, and guesses, estimations as to the decibel level of the diesel trucks that are coming and going from that location during the day?
I don't myself know that off the top of my head. I could check real quick, though.
I don't know that either, sorry.
The tack I'm trying to get to is if this, the standard that we've set with the Unified Development Ordinance is 50, correct me if I'm wrong, Director Simmons, 50 decibels at the property line? Okay, so if the current operation is not exceeding 50 decibels at the property line, then we need to hold this new building to that exact same standard. And from everything that you're telling from the science standpoint, that should be doable.
Yes, sir.
It's just a matter of, and I believe I heard sometime in the conversation as well, if when the facility is completed and measurements are taken and that is not being done, then we have the ability to mitigate before this is open. Is that correct?
That's correct. They need to correct the issue. If they're not at the 50 decibels at the property line, that issue needs to be
We
corrected.
wouldn't give them a final permit, right? We wouldn't say it's completed.
That's exactly the final line I'm trying to draw, is we have an operating standard today, and it needs to be held to, regardless of whether it's the existing building and machinery and equipment that's there. If we build something new, regardless of what it is, then it needs to be held at that same standard.
I have a question for Chief Finland. So with the hours operation, they're saying 24/7. Is that necessary, or is that what was agreed upon or talked about, or can you talk about the hours of
Both.
operation?
It would be both. We looked at some options in regards to this facility where they had hours that were restricted, and that was something that the county was not desired. I would tell you that for the most part, this facility will use during the days and the afternoons, but there's a desire to have the facility available throughout the day because we have personnel working throughout the day. And number one, it wouldn't be disruptive to sleep patterns and things like that to make those individuals come and shoot on their off-duty time, number one. But number two is we have less people working midnights than we do during afternoons or during days. So yes, that would be one of the things that would be required, is that the facility be used 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Thank you.
If I could, Chief, if we could take one more step down that line. Training for your officers, how long is that if they do go over to this facility and they're going to be training? Is that a 6-hour shift of nothing but gunfire? What does a typical training session look like for your officers, so we can get an idea of how many rounds might go off during any particular training session?
Okay. I'm going to speak from the Village of Cary first. And we tend to do firearms qualifications outdoor, by the way, over by the Meyer Material Quarry approximately 3 times a year. And what that entitles is usually some degree of malfunction drills, they're drills that relate to clearing jams in a firearm, so that's not consistent or constant. That's probably a better word, constant. It tends to be by interval. We do have our firearms qualifications, and the firearms qualifications are 50-round qualifications. The course of fire tends to run 15 to 20 minutes, and it's usually proctored by a firearms range instructor that is responsible for safety and also for proctoring the qualification. And then there are certainly times that we would qualify with our long guns or rifles, but that would generally be 1 time a year. But the current state qualification course of fire is 50 rounds. So when we start talking about the number of the times that this facility would be used, it would be used to accomplish those tasks, and there might be some times where it might go over it, but I would tend to believe that we're probably talking 1 to 2 hours, if we're doing other things as well. A qualification course of fire does not take a very, very long time at all.
Thank you.
Trustee Dudek, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I do. Thanks. And I apologize if I missed this somewhere along the line, but I didn't read it in anything that was distributed. The property that you're proposing to put this on, is this property for sale? And how did it get chosen, I guess, if it's not for sale?
The property is owned by the Village of Cary. It's not for sale, but as part of the agreement with the joint facility, the organizations that are involved in it, the Chief might be able to answer better, but there was discussion as far as the organizations that were partnering in the facility could utilize this property for the development of it. The building would be owned by McHenry County, constructed by McHenry County, but the village would still own the land that the building would be located on. That agreement is still to be finalized.
So it's a building lease, they're gonna put the building and then lease it from?
Those terms would be finalized still. That would require board approval.
And the village would still own the property under the building?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Chief, can you walk us through just how we got to this point? Because this whole project's taken some twists and turns, and there's been a lot of work behind the scenes that the chief and other chiefs in the county and the sheriff have undertaken before we settled on this property.
Yeah, so this has been years in the making. I think probably 4 or 5 that we started. And we initially looked at an edict that was presented to the police chiefs and the sheriff in regards to, from our administrators, either county or municipal, to find some manner of efficiencies as it relates to services in law enforcement. And at that time, we were all using a different type of communications system, and that led us to generally, or we all came onto one communication platform, and it's called Starcom 21. And what that has done is improved our efficiencies in regards to interoperability. But for us in Cary, we don't have to maintain our own radio system because we use it as a subscription service, and we don't have to pay for our telephone circuits that would have connected our satellite receivers, and then we don't have the responsibility of maintaining it and fixing it when it breaks. So that's kind of how this started, and then we started looking at what we don't have in McHenry County. And not one police agency that has a building in McHenry County has an operating range in their facilities. Not one. We all use somebody else's range, or we go someplace else. For us, we use the Meyer Material property off of Route 31, as does Algonquin. In fact, we had to consolidate with Algonquin because the Meyer Material took the portion that we were using as our firearms range from us, so we had to use the Algonquin firearms range off of 31 together. So we started looking at things, and the first thing we looked at was perhaps kind of a portable range. So we looked out at Heartland. Heartland is west of Woodstock. And it would have been close to Valley High and across the street from McHenry County's Department of Transportation. What that doesn't have out there is it doesn't have utilities. And we were looking at a range that would have been portable at that time, but it was expensive. It would have been relatively expensive, and it could have been potentially moved, but then we started looking at things like EPA issues where after it's been used for a while, can you move it after lead's been introduced to that? So that was the first thing that we thought, okay, we'll look at another option. So we looked at another option. The option was public-private partnership in Woodstock. An individual had an existing building that he suggested that he would renovate and allow us as a partner to use. However, that would have been cost prohibitive as it related to the amount of cost that we would incur over, consistent use of it. So that option was abandoned as well. We looked at an existing firearms range. There was talk that that building would potentially have been available, and it turned out that there was restrictions in regards to the hours of operation, and the partnership that was involved in that wasn't as eager to sell it as we thought they would. So we had to look for another option, and the Village of Cary has a very large parcel out at Public Works, and we have adjacencies to utilities, and it was in a manufacturing area that potentially could be used for that all three shifts. So that's how we ended up in Cary, was because we had kind of an arduous journey from Heartland to Cary. The other part of this equation, as Mr. Spazzeri had indicated, is that this quadrant of the county has the most population. It's densely populated, and with that comes most police officers. So that's why the option of, or the potential of locating the range here, the training facility here, seemed like a good idea at the time, number one. And number two is the county took ownership of our old facility, the park, the police department and village hall, which would be converted to a law enforcement training center. It'll have at least 3 classrooms there, as well as a conference room. And the potential was that somewhere down the road, there might be the ability to have the ability to train our own personnel within the county versus sending them to different areas in the state for training, and perhaps partnering with a community college. Yeah, it's done in DuPage County. The Suburban Law Enforcement Academy is located at College of DuPage, and there's been other academies that have done the same throughout the state of Illinois.
Okay, thank you for that. So when you, Chief, when you reference "we," you're not referencing the Village of Cary. I assume you're referencing some committee you were on.
That's correct. So there's a couple things that kind of drive my passion in regards to this as well. And the first thing is that it is a joint venture. There are representatives from Algonquin Police Department, the Cary Police Department, Lake and the Hills Police Department, and McHenry Police Department, in addition to the McHenry County Sheriff's Office. So there were some interest at the time of more agencies. We'll offer it again after we have this intergovernmental agreement completely finalized. But so far, those are the agencies, 5 agencies that have been consistent in regards to this. Now, I've had some experience with trying to develop a, at least tangentially or incidentally, when I was in Lake County. And there was a parcel up on 173, it's close to the Wisconsin border. There was talk of having a public safety training facility up there. And I watched that concept kind of die on the vine because there was no entity that was willing to fund such a venture. In this case, we have McHenry County that has indicated they are willing to do that. And I would like to, that's one of my passions here, is to make sure that we have a training facility that we can train our personnel together so that when they train together, they have a familiarity that if something happens actually in the real world, that they have already been introduced to each other and understand their tactics and training.
Okay, thank you for that, and I support that last comment as well. Eric, a question for you. The property, the way it sets up, is there enough room to turn that building 45 degrees so that it actually sits behind, instead of parallel to the way most of the Cary Woods buildings look to sit, but, kind of tuck it behind in the wooded part up at the top of the property, Public Works property?
You're referring to more the northeast of our sludge drying beds, like off the screen here?
I think that's what I'm referring to, yes. Definitely
behind
north.
the salt dome. Is that what you're referring to?
Or but behind the salt shed, or further east to where like the word
Right
proposed
here.
is shown there?
Right there.
Yeah, right there.
Right here.
Yeah, right in the trees.
Right. The reason I ask is because you would have then our building to act as a further sound buffer for any noise that might come and go south.
He's saying back behind the salt, in between the salt dome, Eric, and the drying beds.
Okay. Topographically, that
Yeah,
would be more
correct.
challenging because there is a significant rise in elevation as you go south to north. The access road there behind the sludge drying beds is a lot higher than where the elevation of the salt shed is. So I think construction-wise, getting to that point, and then like the entire building would be, the construction of that location would be a lot more challenging and probably a lot more expensive.
Okay, so it could be done, but it's not cost effective.
Correct.
Okay.
I think
would be my guess.
I think one of the considerations too was this is outside of the secure fence area within Public Works. So we're trying to still keep that security of the Public Works site, wastewater, water operations.
Almost done. Does the Cary Police Department pay for this if this is built in Cary? Is there, I guess I should ask that question differently. Is there a cost to McHenry County Police Departments that want to use this facility? And if there is, is the Cary Police Department having to contribute that, or because it's in our town and admittedly creating some concern, would we have the ability to not have to pay that fee? So there was some advantage to us.
Well, in regards to the construction, that was, there's a commitment by McHenry County to build this facility. Now, we have an intergovernmental agreement that we're working on that establishes a board. And that board would dictate, operations and also develop a budget. And that's why having this facility that would be a partnership is important, because I think that we're going to be able to address the concerns, number one, and to address like operating issues and things of that nature. So I think operating costs would be the thing that we would have some we would be required to contribute or participate in. That would be correct. But in regards, not in regards to the construction.
Many of those,
And I would also say that the sheriff's here, so he could answer those questions as well.
Well, also, we've been budgeting for years for this, for our initial contribution as we started this. And we've been doing this, like the chief had said, 5 years now. We've been trying to work on this whole
I
plan.
haven't been on for 5 years, so this is new to me.
Yeah, but there's a line item on our budget.
Yeah, if I could, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go right ahead, Chief.
And the other thing we did do is 3 years ago, we did pass a resolution indicating at the village board level for all these municipalities and some municipalities that aren't currently involved in this, that they were desirous of having some cooperative issues related to developing training facilities. So that happened a couple years ago, and these agencies that are involved had passed resolutions supporting that concept.
Okay, so then I'm going to conclude by saying what I like and what I don't like. What I like are a lot of the things you just described, and people that I serve with here know the way I feel about partnering and safety as it relates to things going on in the community. So I think those are pluses. What I don't like is 24/7, 365, and I'll be very clear about that. I think I understand that law enforcement is 24/7, 365, but it seems to me like at a minimum there should be some ability to give back on weekends, maybe every other weekend instead of every weekend, maybe closing it even at midnight, rather than, quote, traditional business hours, because I get it. There are people that are on different shifts, and that'll be more convenient for them. But I do happen to agree with the folks that presented some of their concerns that they are going to see more traffic going into one entrance pretty much right in front of some of their homes. And I'm not as concerned about the sound as I am about just trying to minimize the amount of usage. And that's where I just, from my perspective, it'd be nice if it was a possibility of working out every other weekend or some control of hours. And I guess that's where I'll leave that.
And I would also tell you that, because of the staffing issues and things like that, that those overnight hours probably won't be as used as days and afternoons. But I do think that it is necessary, and I know that the sheriff feels the same way, that it has to be available, to, number one, not impact our personnel in regards to their sleep patterns and things of that nature. But number two, it's also an efficiency issue as it relates to overtime and bringing, individuals in on overtime to train when there's a potential to address that while they're on duty.
Thank you.
We have just been joined by.
I'd like to
Go ahead.
speak, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. So I do understand everything that you guys had said coming up, and I do agree with you guys. I have trouble sleeping sometimes, and I wouldn't want something to wake me up. So I guess my question is, for Eric or Brian, I'm not sure what 50 decibels is. I think Trustee Walrath kind of went around that, like what you were saying, like a pickup truck or something like that. Can you kind of just tell us like some examples of what 50 decibels would be, please? Decibels?
Decibels.
Sure.
Thank you.
And I thank you for the opportunity to kind of follow up and answer Trustee Waller's question as well. So some of the basic and common noise levels that you might hear from certain distances, kind of starting from a normal busy highway at about 50 feet away from a busy highway would be about 70 decibels, which is also equivalent to a vacuum cleaner from about 10 feet away. 100 decibels is the sound of a car horn from 3 feet away. And also from an indoor standpoint, the sound of inside a subway train. And also just anecdotally from a truck perspective, obviously that varies by the truck engine model, the configuration, and how far you are away. But maybe the more common noise would be the reverse alarms that we have have to have on a lot of our heavy vehicles. Those are emitting about 100 decibels from about 4 feet away. So those obviously get quieter as you go further. So from a reference point of that, compared to the requirements from the code, I'll keep passing the mic around to Brian.
So from a code perspective, the 50 decibels is more to limit the impacts that a business may have on a specific area, and specifically looks at the separation of the uses. So if you're looking at an industrial area next to residential use, it does identify that there are going to be people that are living in that area, so that area will be occupied in the evening hours. So the 50 decibel level that our code requires is very minimal sound. There may be some sound that carries. Generally, cars driving down a roadway will produce decibel level comparable to 50 decibels in that range, just from the friction of the tires as they're driving through an area. So the noise that would be potentially coming from the facility would be comparable to a vehicle possibly driving through the area as well. And then you will have a separation in addition to where the facility is located at from the property line. Our code looks at what the noise level would be at the property line. And certainly we have the ability to go out there and test it to verify that the facility is meeting that code requirement. We've had done studies in the past for uses that have been operating in the community where we've had noise complaints regarding a manufacturing facility that's been operating, measured it. We also had the gravel mine that was operating in town. They had to comply with the same noise requirements. We would monitor that as well to verify what noise is occurring in the area and measure it to make sure that it does comply with ordinance. So when this facility, if or when it is constructed, we would go out in the area and inspect it to make sure that it complies with that regulation.
Okay, and I know that I've been in support this whole time, over the years with our budgeting of this and things like that. I just do want to really make sure that we're incredibly respectful, and you guys did say that we would be with keeping it 50 decibels or under. And if it's the sound of a car driving by, am I correct?
Yeah, it depends on the speed of the vehicle, but generally, if you're looking at a busy highway, if you're standing next to that, that's 70 decibels is what the amount of traffic you're going to have on that roadway would be. A single vehicle driving through a neighborhood, you're probably in that 50 decibel range.
Okay. I just want to make sure this isn't disrupting anybody's sleep. It's not going to be waking them up from a sleep, all those type of things.
Brian, could you go to the slide, just to clarify for Trustee Weinhammer, go to the slide that shows the property line, the setbacks? Because when we're talking about the property line or the setbacks, so they have to meet at the property line. So if somebody were to do an analysis of the decibel reading, for instance, at our property line, and take it from our public works facility where we have diesel trucks and the front end loaders and that stuff, that's where it is. Then you look at where this new building is going to be. It's, 300 feet beyond that. So the chances of that with the sound deafening equipment they're going to be installing, I don't think that would be a problem.
Yeah, and to add to that, so the reading would be kind of at the green line that you can see on this image. That would be the maximum 50 decibels that would be at that location. Then beyond that point, you would also have the right-of-way for Kerrywood Circle, plus the additional building setback that you would have on the opposite side of the roadway that would further dissipate any noise for the sound to travel that additional distance, 100 feet or whatever it would be, so that noise level should even be further diminished on the southern property line.
And then back when we had RE Chief, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
One other thing I wanted to. We have one microphone that works today. So the other thing I wanted to, clarify or, kind of draw your attention to is that most of the activity in the range will occur on the far north part of this building. So if the front of the building, which is the south side of the building, is 300 feet, it's going to be that much further away from that property line as well. And what we're proposing here, and I don't want to steal the architect's thunder, but it's a tactical range, so we're going to move people, not targets. So the individual officer with their firearm will be another 100 feet downrange for the most part, because that's where we train with our firearm, with our handguns. It may be further back with a rifle, but that's not as, done as often versus, our training and qualifications with a handgun.
And one more comment as we go. The existing public works facility does have a berm and heavy vegetated tree line directly south of our building, which I imagine was put in place with that design because of the fact that our equipment makes noise, and the residential neighborhood to the south being there, or potentially being there in the future. I think that came second. But that there right where the cursor was, there's the existing sound mitigation there as well, topographically.
And then are we doing everything that we can, or is there anything else that we could be doing to make it even quieter, since there is a residential area here? Or is this all the technology that is out there that we can go ahead and put into making it as quiet as possible from the outside of the facility?
Yeah, excuse me, yeah, great question. This is really the belt and suspenders approach. As you know, we're basically taking a concrete tube, we're insulating it in the inside and the outside, and burying it in the ground. So it's really as soundproof as we can, and using the products from that Troy Acoustics.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, could you come up to the podium? Just state your name and address for the record, please.
My name's Judd Erickson. I live in Cary Woods. 2 questions. What is the total cost of this? I've never heard numbers.
Why don't you ask your second question, then I'll have the sheriff come up and ask the
The
answer.
second question is traffic. 14 months to build this thing. How many concrete trucks? Hundreds of concrete trucks. Could you please use Spring Street to get in, not going through our neighborhood?
Well, that's something that we could check into, but if you'd just have a seat right there, so if you have a rebuttal question, you could be right there. Sheriff Prim is able to join us. He's in from a meeting in Peoria, so thank you very much for coming in to shed some light on some of these questions.
I apologize for being late. So, well, the cost to carry for the actual
The
construction.
total cost of the building.
Okay, I get it.
Really?
So, the cost to carry is the donation and contribution of the property. The cost to the county, the bids haven't come in, but we're budgeting somewhere nearly $3 million for the project.
Okay, and that's to be paid for by the county,
Correct.
totally?
Did you want to tell him how you acquired that money?
So a significant percentage of that money for both the training facility and as well as the range is what we call the sheriff's discretionary fund. So this is money that we've seized, or products that we've seized during the course of our criminal investigations. So we're utilizing non-tax funded money, or at least a significant percentage, up to nearly $3 million for the project that's coming out of those discretionary accounts.
Okay. Thank you.
Did you have another question regarding the finances?
The traffic, the construction traffic, could you please put it through Spring Street entrance?
We could take a look at that, but I'm sure that Director Morimoto could speak to that. That's a highly secure area for us. It's where our wastewater treatment plant is, and we don't allow anybody to go through there.
And our streets are highly secured too, because we got children out there. If you take all these concrete trucks and everything else for 14 months, there could be accidents.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Sorry. Okay, so is there fencing right along here where we could just put a temporary construction entrance and shut it off after construction, or is this all fenced here
The
for public works?
Public Works is all fenced.
It's
That's
all
where-
fenced?
Yes.
Can we put a temporary opening in a fence for construction entrance just during that time where they can scan in and out and, I don't know, something
leave
like that?
That's something we could look into. Director Morimoto?
It could be looked at, but it would create obviously, openings in our secure perimeter, which obviously is of high importance to us, not just from a security perspective for the operation, because the EPA does require us to do risk and resiliency assessments and have emergency response plans just to make sure that we're addressing certain issues that could occur. But the safety side of it from just the perimeter keeping the accidents from occurring. The gentleman mentioned children in the area. That would be my biggest concern, having openings in our perimeter, allowing children to wander in and check out the cool facilities we have up there. And we have a lot of open basins and equipment that we do need to keep secure. So it could be looked at if it's open for a limited amount of time, but it does increase that risk.
Hold on just a minute.
And we also are reviewing, thank you, Chief, working with the contractor, like every project. The fewer trucks you have coming in and out with regards to earth moving, the better, and the cheaper it is. That minimizes truck traffic and noise as well. So there's a lot of earth balancing involved that's going on with this project. Again, another reason why FGM has cited the building precisely where it is. Looking at the other alternatives further up the property, like we mentioned before, the topography probably doesn't support that very well, but it also makes the land balancing a lot more challenging as well.
If you have a follow-up question, you come up. Just restate your name and address, please.
David C. Hall, 2105 Hillside, Cary. Just a quick rebuttal. This building is not this area is not secure. You can walk right into that parking lot. You can drive. It's known as the mulch pile corner is where the parking lot is kind of sited right now. So anybody can walk in and out of there. Dogs are walked in there and it's all open around there. I don't know currently what the plans are, but now you can walk right up to where that building is sited. It's not in a secure area. Noise comes from the HVC units on these buildings. Most of them are mounted on the roof. This one's going to be mounted off to the side, but nevertheless, the openings to this building are where the air comes in and the air goes out. Construction 45 years, so I know what I'm talking about. There's no way to stop the air from leaving the building or air to come in the building. You can put all the baffles you want, but still sound will get out and can be heard vertically. And other agencies are going to be coming into our county to use this. It was stated by the sheriff that we'll take care of our own first, but then whoever else, I mean, if somebody from Lake County, if Waukegan, Joliet, Rockford, we'll just bring them all in here to use this, so the monies from McHenry County will be used by other people. And as far as I know, there's no money benefit, there's no cost benefit. We're not gaining anything from this. There's not any tax revenue. And all it's doing is decreasing the property value of the homes across the street when people are told, oh, they live by the gun range. Pfft, I don't want to live there. So those are my last comments. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Sheriff Prim, did you want to respond to that, please?
Relative to the conversation in front of the zoning board as to will there be other agencies that may or may not be invited in to use the facility, that's going to be on an availability basis. That'll be determined by the board whether we want to do that, and there will be a user fee that's associated with it. So there will be some cost benefits if we utilize the range in that fashion. But that's when we formulate this board and we create a true joint training facility, those are going to be decisions that we're able to make. And Cary obviously has a seat on that board as well, so they'll be able to voice their opinions and vote their conscience as far as that goes as well.
Thank you, Sheriff. Did anybody else have any other questions?
I do. So first and foremost, I think everybody up here would like to thank everyone that came out here to share your opinion. And also, I feel very confident saying that anyone that made any disparaging remarks about where you live, none of us feel that that's okay. We don't feel that way. We don't view anything like that. We're trying to view everything for an entire community, and in this case, the entire county. So I think Mr. Spizzeri, when he came up here, he kind of talked about some of the benefits that come along with it. I think everyone's in agreement that we're very supportive of our police in this area. We want to have people trained as competently as possible, because I think we all feel that it's not a question of if this will ever happen somewhere in our county, it's when it's going to happen. And how can we make sure that we have done everything in our power to have all of our police agencies trained to the best of our ability? So in that regard, the fact that they came to Cary, I have to tell you that I'm very excited about that, simply because it gives us an opportunity to get as many law enforcement agencies trained in our area, knowing our area, being available in our area, and being prepared. But we are not looking to disregard anything you're saying about your concerns. These are legitimate. And I think that this board and our architect and everybody else is up here, the sheriff, the police chief, to tell you that we hear what you're saying, and we're going to do everything we can to mitigate this to the best of our ability so that we ensure that we meet the standards so that your life is not impacted in a negative way.
If I could address the disparaging remark that was made in regards to, the facility. It wasn't us that made it. It was a resident that made that remark when they were making their comments or giving their comments at the zoning, planning, and appeals hearing that we had. So none of us used that.
I appreciate that. I just
yeah,
want to
I
make
just
sure
wanted
that
to
everybody
clarify
knew that too.
That we never said that.
Sir, could I ask you to refrain from? Sorry. Thank you. Chief, could you continue? No, I'm good with it. Trustee Collier?
One last issue that we need to address. We had residents talk about it, maybe the public will get to use it. Will this be in our ordinance that public will never be allowed to use this, or is that going to be written that way?
The second condition that was proposed by the ZPA includes the use of the facility or restrictions on the use of the facility. Specifically says the gun range shall be utilized solely for law enforcement training purposes and shall not be made available to the general public for use. So in order to allow it to be used for general public, if it is approved by the village board this evening, that would have to come back before the board for consideration and another public hearing and to amend the conditional use ordinance for this facility. So the condition would restrict it that it only for law enforcement training purposes.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other follow-up questions? Sir, I'll allow you to have one more comment if you'd like.
Again, apologize for having rebuttals at this rate because I've not completely thought all this through. At 5210, the sheriff stated, we will look for less desirable areas such as sanitary waste handling facilities so that we can be a good neighbor. So less desirable area handling facility was the comment, and you can review the zoning, pull it up, put on 52.9, and you'll hear the words come out. So that was said by the sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Finland, did you have anything else you'd like to say? Director Morimoto? Director Simmons? Sheriff Prim, any other comments?
No, like I said, again, I apologize for being late.
Nope, no problem. None said, I'll call for a roll call, please. Courtney? Well, let me redo the motion, okay? I will entertain a motion to approve an ordinance granting a conditional use for an indoor gun range for the McHenry County Joint Firing Range located at 460 Cary Woods Circle, Cary, Illinois.
So moved.
Second.
Courtney?
Dudek?
We can't vote with any additional conditions. It's just as it's proposed.
As it's proposed.
Well, can he request to amend it?
What would you like to amend?
What I suggested before, I'd like to
Hours
see
of
some
operation.
sort of, hours of operation change.
Yes, the zoning board makes a recommendation to the village board, this board, and this board has the ability to review those recommendations and add or adjust any of the conditions that you think are appropriate.
Can I ask a question too then? Would we have the ability, if we find out that after the building is up and going, if it is a problem, can we go back and then amend it? I mean, what happens if we look to hamper the time for people that are on night shift or whatever when they're going to train and we find out that it's not a problem anyway, and maybe we've over-regulated it? I'm just curious.
I have one more
Same type of
question
thing?
also.
Wait, hold on a minute. Is that something that can be done? I don't think so.
Well, it can. I'm not sure about proceeding with the facility, construction of the facility, the operation of the facility as expected, and then are you talking about changing the hours of operation after the fact?
Right, I'm saying if we found out that the building is operating, the gun range is operating, and somehow at 3 in the morning, it's a real problem, would we have the ability as the village to go in and say, hey, you are exceeding your decibel level, or there's something that's causing a problem that we have to come in and change your hours of operation?
Well, first of all, if you exceed 50.
Correct. If you exceed,
Yeah, they have to
exceed,
do that.
Violation of the
yeah,
ordinance.
if
So-
you exceed 50, then it's a violation of the ordinance. So it's a zoning violation that we would have the ability to enforce for the use of the property. So we certainly could work with the owner or operator of the building from that perspective to say, you don't comply with the 50 decibel levels, you cannot operate during this time period until that issue is addressed. That's any
We've
noise.
got,
yeah.
we've got levers in place to
Right.
deal with this.
Correct.
The motion that's before us is not what are the hours of operation, how loud it's gonna be. We have triggers and things in place to take care of those
Correct.
issues. The motion that's in front of us is, do we want to allow this facility here? All those other things, the sound levels, everything else, we have triggers in place for those, no pun intended, for what happens if the sound is above what it's supposed to be. If we have issues with traffic, if we have issues with noise from traffic, that can be dealt with just like it would in any other area where we have these ordinances in place. So the board's position is not how are we going to run this facility, because it's not ours to run. The board's position has got to be, do we want to have this here, yes or no? And that's the vote that's been called.
I think unless we put an amendment to the motion, which would be to change or to alter our hours of operation, I believe that is possible to do.
But you're changing the UDO. We're not having a conversation here about changing
I'm not
the
changing
noise
the
ordinances and
UDO,
time
I'm
of it.
changing the
It's exactly what you're
operating
doing, Rick.
Well, hold on just a minute. Let's not get, I'd like to address trustee Dudek's concerns about the hours of operation. Way back when we started this whole conversation, when you did it, part of the allure of having a centralized location like this 24/7 was to eliminate overtime for all the agencies, including us. Because in order for us to train our officers, they go off-site and we incur an expense at overtime. So we're all looking to reduce our costs of operation for our police department. It's very expensive, as you know, to run a police department. For us to make this concession right now is not in the spirit in which this facility was being brought forth, so that we could have everybody, every shift, have equal opportunity to be trained, and be trained by the same people, so that there's that continuity through the county. I think that the least amount of officers on the street are midnight to 8 o'clock, I would imagine, so there wouldn't be as much traffic coming in and out of the facility at that time. So I think that in order to change something like this that has not been agreed upon would be, that we would be doing a severe disjustice to this entire operation.
Okay, then I'll vote yes, but I'm gonna go on record as saying I have served on a number of boards in this town in over 12 years. And the boards have always tried to do what they can to protect the residents. I personally don't see any of that here. All I suggested was a change to the operating hours. And the minimal ask I would have is an alternating weekend. If we can't do that, we can't do that. I'll vote yes, but I want my statement on the record.
Understood?
Before we go ahead and vote, I just want to ask then Sheriff Prim one question.
Sheriff, could you come up to the podium, please?
Sorry, just going back to Trustee Dudek's question, is that something that that would be viewed highly negative to only have two weekends available in the evening? I'm sorry, in the overnight hours to be able to go ahead and train during those times? I'm just trying to
No,
find out as much information as
I understand your
possible.
question and I understand your concern. And so the honest answer is if you're gonna change the hours and you're gonna minimize the time that we can use it, the benefit to having that facility is diminished. So we'd have to actually go back and try to figure out, are we going to be getting the return that we want on our investment? So the location, instead of putting it out in the county, instead of putting it a distance away, where it's a less populated area, we talked about that originally too. We have the overwhelming majority, probably over 70% of the law enforcement is in this little corner of the county. To move 70% of the law enforcement, 30, 40 minutes away, to move them 30, 40 minutes back, we felt it was counterproductive. We thought that we'd get the best service by being located in an area that would have the maximum use of it. So that factored into our decision-making coming back in here, and then obviously the partnership with Cary that we have overall. But, so in answer to your question, just to be totally honest with you, I don't know. I would have to really look at it. I have 3 months left in office, so I'm retiring. But at the end of the day,